Welcome, gentlemen. It's the Liberated Man Podcast, and I'm happy to have a great special guest today, my good friend and co-coach, John Keegan, all the way from New York City. So welcome to the Liberated Man Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Welcome you to my life. Thank you.
Welcome to John's great life. You should check out his great Instagram, by the way. What's it called again? John's Great Life?
John, I know. I have a personal one, which is for friends and ladies. And then I have, for everyone else, John Keegan Lifestyle.
John Keegan Lifestyle. All right.
Yeah. Right.
That's something interesting. So anyway, today we're going to talk about some cool stuff. We've just been warming up a little bit because we're coming out of the 2020 lockdown period. We don't really want to go on about that so much, but one of the key themes and topics that's come up is the idea of dealing with the struggle of becoming a liberated man, dealing with the struggles of life, and also not just struggle related, but how to get out of struggle, how to deal with struggle, how to get out of stagnation, how to inspire yourself, how to build momentum, this kind of thing. So, and both me and John have a history of being some like, let's say some down low, hard hitting people. Sometimes we've been down low and we've been up high, so we know what it's like to be on both ends of the spectrum. And I think it could be of great value to guys to hear a bit about the journey of what it's been for us to kind of create liberation for ourselves, and maybe some strategies and ideas that might be cool along the way. So with that being said, I just want to open up the idea of, like, stagnation in general. I mean, we're all familiar with stagnation, right? Stagnation is when we feel slow, lethargic, stuck, heavy, tired, overwhelmed, like things are not really flowing, life sucks, whatever. And there's a tendency to kind of just want to retreat or to kind of fold back into yourself and just go back to, let's say lesser habits that are not so good. And I'll put my hand up and say, the last few weeks I've definitely had my times of that. I've had, my PlayStation 4 time and my Netflix, and, I've smoked a bit of weed. I've done the things that probably weren't the best for me. But then I've also kicked myself up the butt and sort of said, okay, enough's enough. It's time to get back in the game and remember that, I'm a warrior. I'm a creator. I'm the person I really want to be. And to start tuning that a lot more, because that's really what's important. But I'll bounce back to you, John. Like, what do you reckon about, stagnation and your experience of stagnation in general?
Yeah, well, this is great. Number one, for everyone listening, congratulations on being here today, because, just looking at whether you're listening now in this time that we're making it, or in 5 years you stumble upon this on YouTube or on Shae's podcast, you've arrived to today, which means that you made it, and you made it through this. And I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit, or when you're listening to self-development people or looking for inspiration, something that often annoys the fuck out of me is all these high energy type A alpha guys, what going on about, do it, crush it, kill it. Gary Vee, who annoys me to no end. He's inspiring to me once a month. I'm sure he's a sociopath who just hasn't killed anybody, but instead, pretends he has emotions and he just keeps going. I mean, I really believe that about him. He's definitely, He's just a sociopath who doesn't kill people. He's the one who tries to inspire people. So good for him. I'm glad he's found that that's a more healthy thing. But for people like, for me, I have emotions and I have ebbs and flows, and I have success, and I also have my struggles. And I think it's important to talk about them. But congratulations for making it here today. You made it through a global pandemic, whether you gained 10 pounds or whether you came out ripped, whether you found your mojo yet or you haven't. Congratulations, and feel good you made it, and you didn't fucking off yourself, and you didn't, you didn't lose your mind totally. If you did lose it and you're listening today, hopefully you can get it back right now, so really, seriously, have that empathy, because it's real, I'm happy to be here connecting with you, but I've spent a lot of fucking time alone during this, and it just happened that way for me, Some people got to be with their girlfriend, their lover, or their wife or their baby or a group of their friends. I happen to be alone in Miami Beach, you know. So in a time when you don't meet people, so I did find a lot of happiness at times. I'm a guy who likes to connect with people. That's my MO. I really do like to go out. I like to be alone every day and have my space. But I also like every day I got to meet up with at least one person, or or go meet a stranger and have a conversation, or have those little moments that we have. Ordering a tea and chit chat with the person behind the counter and make a little connection for a moment. Those moments matter to me. We don't put enough into them, but all those were taken away during this. So, and I also don't. I'm like a free range human. I like to go around, a free range city human, I should say. Like I like to go around from my one little tree to the other, to picking my organic smoothies or whatever, and then just being done with it. For here, I've had to learn all these new skills, you know, like food shopping. And I like to go to supermarkets, but it's usually to get one thing and to say hi to 5 people. But now it's like, you know, I'm going food shopping with a mask on, and, you know, with a bunch of people who are unhappy, and it's a whole different vibe. But I've learned to food shop. I've learned to make my own smoothies and my own food and all that. And I've started to enjoy that and see how much money it's still not cheap, you know, but I definitely blow a lot of money, you know, like just on people making me something I could have made at home, especially when I walk down my steps and I go a half block and have them make something I could have made and saved $12, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever they charged me, and it only cost $3 to make what I learned, you know. So those things are positive, you know, but the main thing is I'm just saying we've all been through something here, whether it's just during this pandemic or whether it's in 5 years from now. You've been through something. Congratulations on being here, and really and that's what I want to say about liberating yourself from yourself. Yeah. Liberate yourself from the goddamn dictator in your mind that keeps telling you got to do more, be somebody else. There's something good about that guy, meaning like supposedly wants the best for you. But really, he's like, it's like saying that Kim Jong-un wants the best for his people. He says he does, but he's a dictator, you know, or the guy who runs the Belarus, you know, wants the best. But you have this little dictator in your mind beating you up, telling you you're not good enough. The future is brighter. Today's not your day. Tomorrow is going to be better. Tomorrow you'll start. Then you'll be good. And when you finally have the exact amount of zeros, then you'll be free. When you finally walk down the street with the hottest girl you could ever imagine, with her arm around you, looking you in the eyes, then you'll be free. Then I'll be me. Sounds like a poem, right?
There's your song, John, right there. Let's write a song.
Yeah, then I'll be free, then I'll be me. But that is the thing. That is the mind. And I know this guy because he's in my head too. And he comes up every day. The big difference is I used to solely listen to him and think he was in charge, and now he's diminished into the background, you know. And sometimes he's good for a kick in the pants, but the problem is he usually takes over, and then we forget the main thing is, and it really is true that we've got to. All this is useless unless we're feeling good, you know. Unless we find a way to feel good. And the trick is that when I have this, then I'll feel good. Well, now I have more than I ever had. But now that I've been in Miami taking walks and walking past $20 million homes, and you know, they love the Lambo down here for some reason. I still don't think it still doesn't appeal to me. But when I see that you know, there's more to have, more things to collect, more experiences to see, to have, to be. It's like you could just get lost and I don't have enough. I don't have enough. How did that person get that? And then you can get into they must be drug dealers. They probably are. And they must, or they must be, you know, they must have inherited. They probably did. And then, you know, you can get into all those things. But I can also be honest, I never really cared about things that much. You know, I never really cared about $20 million homes that much. You know, I like a nice view. That's something I do enjoy. But I like pretty things. That's true. I like to look out and see pretty things. I like to be in a comfortable space. But I never really much was one to chase money. But for me and for you, we're more creators. We like to create moments. We like to create connections. We like to create content that helps people have better lives. And so therein lies our struggle, because we have such great things that we could be creating a lot more. And then that's where I kick myself a lot, is that, I'll get ramped up on it, and then I'll fall off of it, or it didn't land the way I thought, as many people should be listening, or as many people didn't buy it as I wanted, or I just didn't finish it because I got onto something else. And then you start to beat yourself up over not creating, over not doing, and then feeling bad about yourself because that tomorrow never came. And I think that's the thing. Tomorrow never came, but so many great things have happened. I know personally in my life today that are happening today. And then if I start only thinking about tomorrow not coming, it didn't come, and what I don't have and what I didn't do, instead of that, number one, I'm fucking here, I'm healthy, I feel good, I pretty this, I'm pretty that, I have things going on, I have someone cool to talk to and collaborate with. Like, let's focus on that. Like, that is created for me. That has been created by me, that here we are being this person, that people are listening and saying, wow, or tuning in and vibing with this. That's amazing. Is it 1 million people? I don't know. Maybe it will be. Is it 1 billion people? I don't know. Maybe it will be. Is it one guy? Is it one girl? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 100? I don't know. That's actually pretty, that's like a tribe, There's something to it. Like, you have to tune in and realize, to focus on what I do have and not what I don't have. To focus where I am and what's so good about where I am and not where I'm not. And that's the human condition for a lot of us, But it's finding ourselves feeling good about more where I am than more of the time that creates happiness and contention, more than what did I have, what did I achieve. Although having and achieving is nice and important, and can get us up in the morning and get our lives on track and have us bring something beautiful in the world, Anyway, that's my opening rant.
That's great. That's a lot to unpack. We can certainly go a lot of directions from there. So in reflection to what you're saying, first off, wherever you are out there and whatever you're doing, I mean, some people really had a pretty normal time and maybe even a good time in this period, and some people had not so much of a good time, and there's a lot of fears about the future and insecurities or uncertainties about things. And with that in mind, I think it's really important to remember, let's say, your base principles. What helps you, what can help a human being to be resilient, what can help a human being to navigate the world. And I, for one, have been, navigating the existential crisis of my own life and humanity for a long time. And I've learned to be strong in that. And I've learned to use that as a learning tool. And there is an opportunity in this. There's an opportunity for growth. So one of the things you mentioned first off is, being really grateful for what is and focusing on what's going well, what's good. And that's something that, I think we've always had a little laugh about, is like, what are you not focusing on that's good, right? What are you not focusing on that's not the problem? So coming back to what's available to you. So even just the fact that you can sit here and you can breathe is a good beginning, and then build on that and coming back to that. But then, of course, there's a strategy and a structure to things as well, in my opinion. So as a coach and as somebody that, specialize in, let's say, inner game and helping people with mindsets and stuff, I think that, it's important to recognize that as we go about our business in life as humans, we're trying to make sense of things. And part of making sense of things is we want to have purpose. We want to have goals. We want to have, a place. And that's all very much related to things like security and status and feeling comfortable in certain kinds of ways. And there's a big part of our brain which is very addicted to all of those things, because of course we want to feel secure. Of course we want to feel comfortable and desired and all those kinds of things. But sometimes, life throws us curveballs where we can't get that for some reason, or circumstances challenge us. We get sort of knocked down, or things are not working to our advantage. And I think it's important in those times to, yet again, come back to some fundamental principles. So maybe that's something we can break down today, because I think both of us have got life experience in terms of, what kinds of fundamental principles can you fall back on when you're coming from a place of, disorientation. How do you get reorientated? How do you move from stagnation to flow? And I mean, you're a bit of a master of that when it comes to doing that socially. I don't know many other people as I'd say you're like a hunter gatherer connector. You're out there like, enjoying the world through the avenues of connection. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And part of what I wanted to sort of open up with is that, as we go about our lives, we have where we are, we have where we want to be, and then we have what the gap is. And if where we want to be feels like it's hard to get to, or it's impossible, or we feel like circumstances are really working against us, and then we feel something like anger, doubt, frustration, sadness, like these negative kinds of emotions, then that's usually a sign that there's something underneath the surface that's telling us that we've got a belief or a need that's not okay. We've got some kind of experience that's calling our attention to it. And part of the basic theory of let's say inner game and really understanding mindsets is like, how can you learn to tend to that part of yourself? How can you learn to do surgery on your own mindsets? How can you learn to change the operating system or upgrade yourself so you can be more effective in your life? Because one thing that I know, and I mean, technically, I shouldn't be in the position of the life that I've lived. I shouldn't have the kinds of experiences that I've had because, there was no evidence to suggest that I had any of these opportunities. So most of the experiences and opportunities that I've really created in my life have come from my own mindsets, have come from my own shifts in mindset. And of course, yes, there's realities. I had to also go out into the world and meet people and make friends and build resources and do certain things. But it all started on the inside. And I think that's a really cool thing that guys should really come back to, especially in this time now, because one thing that I'm really struck with is that there's a huge kind of emphasis on bad news. I mean, everybody's like, there's a lot of bad news and everybody's pumping on adrenaline and fear and insecurity and like what's going to happen next. But we really got to remember in these times that each one of us is responsible for our own little bubble of the world, our own little part of the world.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
And in that, like, we can be creators, we can assist in the overall creation to a degree, and maybe our influence and our vibe, it will make our day better, but then at the same time, maybe it will make a few other people's days better. And that may be a little bit viral, because you never know how much impact you can have through just choosing to be somebody that's being the cause rather than the effect of your experience. But having said that, I want to also say, like, it's okay to feel shit sometimes. It's okay to feel stuck sometimes. It's okay to have stagnation and difficulty and circumstances that beat you down. It's okay, as long as you start to recognize, this is an opportunity to grow. This is an opportunity or a trigger. This is a time to kind of, draw back and to find resources and to come back into some kind of growth experience. Because in times of difficulty, I think we have a choice to either go into post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. So it's like, how are we going to choose to come out of that? And the truth is, if most people are honest with themselves, the greatest transformations and the greatest potentials that they've experienced inside themselves have come from challenges. They've come from difficulties. So that's a super key thing to kind of to keep in mind, and start to affirm to yourself that, as a person that is able to make your own decisions, that you can create your own life to a degree. You deserve the life that you can create. You are able to upgrade your mindsets and the way that you think about things. And this does definitely affect your relationships and your social skills. But as we also know, it directly affects things like your bank account and your health and your well-being and your energy levels. So it's a very broad and important factor to get into.
And the people that you bring into your life, the direct result of the energy you're putting out, and something you tapped into there for sure, which is great for right now, because we've all got sucked into, you and I were on this island together a few months ago, however the fuck you say it, Kopangang, how do you say it?
Kopangang, yeah.
Kopangang? The Russians say Pangang.
Pangang.
That makes the most sense. Pangang. I can do that. Pangang, right? So we're on this island, Pangang, for many months.
Sorry, Thai people, by the way. Sorry, we're messing up your country name.
Yeah. Kopangang. So for many months we were there, right? And we still can't say it, but we did experience it. And here's the thing. we were there, and there was a lot of spiritual people there. There was a lot of people focused on well-being, on meditation, on enjoying the day, on happiness and love and life and sex and all good stuff and good food. And but at one point, that consciousness of fear even gripped that place. So the highest minds got in us, and panic, and because there was just almost no choice not to get wrapped up in it, because the whole world was changing overnight, right? It's like going into World War II. It's like saying, oh, I'm just going to do my yoga mat all day, and the Nazis are taking over Germany. Well, I'm just going to do my yoga mat. It was kind of like that, it really was, so we had to make choices and decisions and respond. But at the same time, it definitely, it was traumatizing in a way to your own, for the momentum, the flow we had, the goals we had, like anybody going through a war. We had a big plan for the year, but they bombed our town, they bombed the town. So, but it is now gone from one fear-based thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And we've been just all tuned in because it's affected our lives so much. And it really is. It's like, how can we pull ourselves out of this now? With and forever, like, how do you pull yourself out of tuning into the negative TV station, the negative radio station, the negative Twitter feed, the negative, because, in all those negative things, there's a pleasure. There's a pleasure in feeling anger. There's a pleasure in feeling, like when I look at some people's tweets, it's like, yeah, they're going to get those people. They're going to get them. They're going to lock them up. They're going to, whatever it is, it never happens. It never comes. It goes on, right? Or all the people right now were wrapped up in the pandemic. Now there's riots. Now all of a sudden, nobody cares about social distancing. Apparently no virus, and millions of people should go out and loot and riot and this, so it's like, but it's just more, but people are so tuned into the news feed, that we're all sucked into that. Immediately we went from, hey, the world's reopening, to now we're sucked into, they're burning buildings down, there's racism, we're sucked in. It's like almost like you have no choice. In fact, if you go on social media, apparently you have no choice. You better say something about this or you're a bad guy, It's like, wow, I thought it was one guy, Psycho Gary Vee, says today, you better say something or you're a bad guy, right? So it's like, like there's all that going on. Like, you better be a part of this. You better be in our consciousness right now. And it's like, wow, I thought I was my own individual. I thought I was a liberated man. I'll feel what I want to feel. I'll experience the world how I want to experience it, not how the way you dictate I should experience it. So even people like Gary Vee, trying to be the thought in your head, the dictator, and anyone tells you should be, they've already lost. The problem is, so as soon as someone says, you should be doing this, you should have done that, they've already lost. But the thing is we tell ourselves that all day. I should have done this. I should have worked out this morning. I should have meditated. I should have made the call. I should have talked to that girl. I should have did this. I shouldn't have sent that text message. So we go into this, we tune into that should have mindset, right? So we get into, again, back to the negative track, focused on the fear, focused on the lack. And it makes it so much easier for us to focus on the news that wants to feed us into the fear. And it's how can we, pull, when it's so easy, it's so, just a slight tangent. When I used to be an actor, the thing is the way that I grew up, it was easy to be angry. It was like, we didn't cry, we laughed a lot, and we got angry a lot. And that was normal. Irish American home, and that was normal to me. I didn't even know there was another way. My sister cried, girls cried, boys didn't cry, angry, right to anger, right? So, but anger, and then when I took acting class, I was like, I would show people like how angry I could be. It's like, whoa, this guy's angry. It was like really powerful. Like, man, that guy knows anger, right? And then one guy finally said, look, you got anger. We need to see some other stuff from you. You know what I mean? I want to see, I want you to go into experience stimuli in another way than just responding in anger. But, and then the thing is that anger is the easiest emotion to grab at every turn in your life. And the more you grab it, the easier it gets to go to. It becomes your default, And it's the same thing with negativity and negative news. It's the easiest thing to go to is the train wreck, the drama, the burning buildings, the end of the world, the this. It's the easiest thing to go to every day, especially when your brain is just doing it all the time. So now it's like how do you train your brain to start looking around and seeing the good, seeing the positive, seeing the sunshine, feeling the air on your face. That's the thing you want to think about for yourself is how can I focus on what is good? And it's about making that decision that, yeah, there is a burning building. Yeah, there is things. But the truth is in my life, what am I focusing on that's great, that's going on in my life? And what can I focus on that makes my life even better? And how can I gently guide myself to that point? So coming out of the energy of fear by paying attention to fear-based thinkers all day, because it seemed like it was for our survival, almost like a lot of the dramas and traumas we had as a kid were for our way to survive to adulthood. And then it's like, wow, we keep reliving them and reenacting them and doing them, but they don't serve us anymore. So in the moment of us sitting on the edge of eternity and, one of our friends going on about, how bad this is going to be and people and countries literally shutting down, and all of that is a good metaphor for there was a trauma that made us start to tune into certain information and start to go through it. And then it became the go-to thing to look at all day for everyone, to the point where to this day, you can't not have a conversation about it in some way. It has to be brought up. It has to be a part of it. And then all the lower frequencies. Is it real? Is it fake? We've been duped. These are things I think about. Is it all that? But that's so easy to go into those negative loops now. And then it was so easy, honestly, I think, for people to do that it was easy for them to go into be manipulated by media. We got their attention. We got them focused on fear and they're angry. Let's poke them. Let's keep going. And so my question to you is, and my answer right now is be gentle, gently guide yourself to to finding something that feels simply good. Let's start there. I always start with the being rather than the doing. How am I being? I'm being chill. I'm being easy. What's good is that the sun is shining outside. What's good is I got new sneakers. What's good is that I got my favorite tea right next to me on my left-hand side. What's good is I'm having a great conversation. What's good is there's some things that are good, And then I'm going from there and I'm moving into what I don't have is a girl sitting behind me waiting to get fucked right now. I don't have that right now. I don't have, I don't have the 6-pack right now. I don't have, right? So that's what's happening. So so I'm focusing on what I do have, what I can believe, and that I feel good, and I want to ease my way out of this frequency of non-stop negativity and anger and fear, which the whole world got gripped with. But then we have to say, okay, I got the information. Whatever the information you got on that, that's yours. You got it. Okay? You survived this. You survived up until now in your life. How do I move on? How do I focus on what matters? How do I create the life I need to create right now? And the simple answer is you got to start taking actions. Obviously, now it comes down to actions. You got to take risks. Like when for a lot of people, it's a social problem to say hi to another person. It's a huge emotional risk to go and connect and put yourself out there like that. It feels so big. And then, but everything is a risk. And you have to look at, and obviously with that risk, it's really all emotional. It's not generally a physical, you're not going to die, actually. It feels like you will for some people. And with what we just went experience, we were all where we were going to die, and some people did. But when I look now at what the information that I have is that, I'm not, I have to take a risk and live life. So I'm going to start living life knowing the risks, and then I'm going to, act accordingly like I always do, So with all the information I have, I act accordingly to have a great day and not die throughout it, So it's the same idea now. So I got to take a risk. But the biggest thing is, and it's definitely happened to me, where I just keep tuning into the car crash. What's going on now? What's next? Because A, it's easy to do. And B, it became necessary for a while. I got to tune into this car crash so I fucking can make a decision. Mm-hmm. And now it's the autopilot. And before you know it, there's a new car crash to look at, like happening now. And next week there'll be another new car crash to look at. And before we know it, this will be a story we tell, hopefully. Yeah. So, so anyways, my point is how do we get ourselves focused on the great news instead of the shitty news?
Well, I think that's a really important thing. I mean, as somebody that I think is like, if you're listening and you want to be an individual, you want to be somebody that is yet again a creator, a liberated man, somebody that's going for life on your own terms, then at some point you need to kind of create a bit of a circle of boundaries for yourself and decide for yourself what's healthy and what's unhealthy, and to start to be the master of your own meanings. Because if we really get honest with ourselves, it's all about it's about the meanings that we're putting on things. It's the narratives, it's the stories. And yet again, it's not something that's very spoken about, but I think it should be spoken about, which is that we live in a culture right now, which is in the mainstream, majorly built upon capturing people's attention, because attention is good for advertising. If you want to sell people stuff, you've got to get their attention. And they know from scientific studies that when you shock people and when you show people scary things and tragedy, and you keep them in a kind of a state of like, what's going to happen next? We don't know. It's all scary. Stay tuned. Then everybody signs up for the next minute or the next 10 minutes of viewing. And then, of course, they can hijack your attention for another 2 minutes of advertising and sell you some shit or try to subscribe you onto something. And that's not all bad. I want to say, like, okay, that's a system. That's a business model. It's a business model that has grown inside of the current like context of our modern world, and it's something that's picking up momentum. And I think what we've just seen in the recent history is, kind of a hyper normalization of that. I mean, this kind of like that's becoming the normal kind of experience to be hijacked and put through this kind of process. And obviously, when you really look at like the basis of where humans actually come from, because we've been getting into this cool guy, which people should check out if you're interested, is a guy named John Young, who's basically a guy who he's all about nature connection and connection to reality in some sense. And his primary question that drove him his whole life, and he's in his 60s now, and when he was in his teen years or whatever, he started asking, why is it that some people seem to be so connected to life and to be so full of life, whereas some people are not? And why is it that some cultures seem to be so full of life and connected to life and some are not? And he found that the general kind of tendency is that the indigenous people tended to be people that were more connected. They were more connected to nature. They were more connected to each other. And when he boiled all that down, it came back to some of the most powerful connectors, and when I say connectors, I mean people that were in tune with the flow of life, in tune with the flow of now, were the Kalahari Bushmen. Now, Kalahari Bushmen don't have days of the week. They don't have distractions. They don't have anything. And what's also really interesting? When you boil down our genetics and you go right back, everybody goes back to the Kalahari Bushmen. So they are our ancestors. They are us. That's where we all came from. And it's only because it's this interesting thing that happened that at some point, they proliferated and they grew and they went in different directions and they did different things, and then they evolved into different cultures. And over time, because those cultures became stressed, those cultures became traumatized, they became warlike cultures, because Bushmen don't even have a war gene. They don't have fights, which is really interesting. Whereas over time, as the human species evolved and broke off into different groups, we became more warlike. We had resource battles and difficulties. And then by the time it came back to the Bushmen, when you had, like, let's say, different strains of humanity coming back into the areas where the original Bushmen were still living, they wiped them all out and slaughtered them. So the only reason that the Kalahari Bushmen are still in the Kalahari, because it's the only place that they couldn't invade and take over, or nobody wanted it because it wasn't a nice place to live. So anyway, that's a bit of a weird tangent. But what I'm trying to get at is that On one end of the spectrum is raw humanity in its original form, which is we are now creative and connective beings. And the cool thing about the people who live like that is that they live very rich experiences of life. And you know what's also really interesting? People don't realize the value of it, but when you spend time in connection, and connection can mean lots of things, but when you spend time in connection to what's important, and what's important is things like life, relationships, and for example, in the more traditional indigenous kinds of worlds, it's not unusual to spend half an hour saying hello to somebody. And if you really think about it, we like to do that too sometimes. We like to hang out with our friends and drink coffee and chat and just shoot the shit without any particular agenda or anything, because we're actually experiencing connection. And usually what are we doing in that time? We're doing storytelling. And when we're doing storytelling, what are we doing? We're enriching our version of reality because we're retelling our experience and revivifying it and learning how to learn from that and expressing that to others. And then we're actually enriching our own neurology, and we're growing through that process. So the reason I point that out is because on one end of the spectrum, that's actually where we came from. That's what we were for hundreds of thousands of years. And then somehow we've come into this point now where we've been incentivized into being scaremongered, little herd thinking kind of, human beings that are being data mined by artificial intelligence to try to get profit off of us. So if you want to be a powerful individual, in my opinion, you've got to say, fuck that. I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to choose to be part of that reality. Now, of course, you need to be aware that, yes, like technology and media and society and lockdowns and all these things are actual realities in the world around you. But you get to make the meanings. You get to make the choice. You're the one who gets to really say, what am I going to make out of this opportunity of my life right here and now? And I had another conversation with a really interesting friend of mine today. I'll quickly just add in this thing. And he's a guy that has done an incredible amount of inner work and transformation. I don't know many people that I've ever met in my life that have done the same amount of stuff that him. So, and he knows a lot about a lot of different things. And we got into a very deep conversation about the deep nature of reality. And one of the most highest level teachings in the tantric traditions, which are Eastern traditions, is the teaching of emptiness. And that's basically that nothing is real. Nothing is what it seems. And part of the power of that mindset, which is really challenging and really difficult for people to come to terms with, is that when you really boil everything down, it's all choices and it's all perspectives. And if you really want to get honest with yourself and go to the highest level of your potential, you've got to let it all go. You got to let all the pros, the cons, the positives and the negatives, the positives and negatives at the same time. You got to learn to move through all of that stuff. Now that's a very advanced mindset. But the reason I bring that up also is because imagine that you could realize that the fundamental nature of existence is basically a gift. Everything that is granted to you beyond nothing is a gift. And then at that point where you realize, okay, the baseline of my whole life is the fact that it's all basically nothing. So therefore, it's all bonus. I get to create, I get to live, I get to experience. And we are dealing with this very interesting reality as human beings because we have a personality, we have thoughts, we have beliefs, and we have history. So me and you were talking about how, we don't come from, let's say, well-off backgrounds, let's say, like we're both very lucky. I've had a great life in many ways, but, my family history is a working class history. My family history is a history of struggle. I've got 5 generations of downtrodden Australian working class people that go before me. So, the nature of the history that I come from is a history of difficulty and struggle. So of course it's going to be easy for me to stress out. Of course it's going to be easy for me to go into that survival story. But yet again, me here now as the conscious creator Shae, as the aware adult version of myself, I can start to say, what do I want? Where am I going to go? And I can start to harmonize my mind, and I can start to develop a more positive relationship with my dreams, with my subconscious, and to really evolve myself. And this comes down to the very important factor that my focus, my attention, my choices and what I'm choosing to take into myself and what meanings I'm putting on that are the major causative factor of my life experience. And of course, stuff happens, but it only means something if we make it mean something. And it's very bizarre, because part of the work that I do is I do a lot of trauma work with people and helping people to clear difficulties and sadness in their lives. And what's interesting is about when a successful clearing happens, somebody can go from a traumatic experience of being beaten or locked in a cupboard or severely hurt in some kind of way, to realizing with a higher level of meaning and understanding that there was actually an opportunity in the experience to evolve and to grow. And it doesn't mean, of course, we want to be beaten up or anything like that. But what I mean is, like, inside of our challenge, inside of our frustration, inside of our limitation and constraint is the seed of transformation, is the seed of growth, is the seed of learning. And if we can learn how to tune ourselves as, like, I'm the creator, I'm the one who's going to grow through this process, I'm the one who can transform this, then it might take some effort and some focus and some skill, but we can do that. And what will happen when we actually do that successfully is we get gold, we transform that. And then usually what happens is we kind of laugh at those negative experiences, or we see them as blessings, or we see them as like opportunities in disguise that were really given to us to really grow our sense of character, our being. And I think in some sense, I mean, that's a larger context of understanding, but that's a real spiritual journey. And I think that's super powerful, because it allows you to really transform the context of your life. And just to add one last little bit to that, which I think is a really good first step, and we've kind of talked about this, but it's very important, is if you're feeling a bit shit or down or heavy, or got a tendency to beat yourself up and not give yourself a positive kind of reward, then start to think about your outcomes. What's good? Where are you going to go? What experiences have you had in the past that are really useful? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, so there's so much to it. But one is look, we all come from somewhere, right? There's a somewhere that we came from, and part of growing up and stepping into who we are comes a lot from those stories that of the life that we've lived, and those stories, those experiences, created patterns that we seem to live out every day, almost like a little robot, right? But we can break free from them, and that's the beauty of being a human being. That's the beauty of really transcending our base nature and going into a more spiritual nature. So what I'm saying is you come from where you come from, I come from where I come from, and everyone listening comes with their own stories. And some of those stories really put imprinted in us so much that it creates a series of reactivities and reactions that may or may not serve us, And obviously some people, dad, and you might be listening now, and my mother and father were CEOs of some company, and they were real forward thinkers and business thinkers, and they were able to share that way of being with their kids just very easily. Some people were brought up by, somebody was brought up by Wayne Dyer, somebody was raised by those people, and that's their stories. And that they have a different path, and also their path will have struggles. And for all of us, that is the gift of being human. That is the gift that I've always shared, and you share, is the gift of transformation. One gift I did get from my own mommy, my own ma, is when I was a kid growing up, she was often unhappy, and we had nice times. I don't want to act like she was a witch or something, but she definitely was not. She was definitely, there was a lot of dramas and traumas, So, and I remember that I had a lot of bad feelings about her. And then at one point, she went to therapy, and she had a tough upbringing. She grew up she was an identical twin, and there was 5 girls. And her father, who was a lawyer, who had the world for a moment, became a raging alcoholic, to the point where they all had to go to a year-long orphanage. She went to the sanatorium. That's where they sent people back then, the sanitarium or whatever. And for a year in the 1940s, she had to go to an orphanage with nuns and all this. And then their mom had to get a job and work. And then after a year, they got to come back. So she came from that, and then the back and forth with the alcoholism and all that. So for her, she went to therapy. And during that few years, she would cry a lot. There would be a lot of crying around the house. There'd be a lot of things going on, a lot of letting go of her stories. And she began to soften as a person, to the point where she initiated a divorce with my dad, And then, and really she made, before my eyes, a transformation. And this is a very big gift, and it's interesting too. She made a transformation where she really let go of a lot of that stuff. I mean, almost all of it. It was really unbelievable. And she became a new mom. I was already 18. She became a new mom.
Mm-hmm.
I had an older brother and a younger sister. And I had all my stories about her, very important stories, like those first years of my life, I had all those stories, my brother really had all those stories. And she had to live, these were her kids who she loves, she had to live with those stories coming at her every day. You are this, you are that, you did this, you are this, you did that. You hurt me, you ruined me, it's your fault, everything's your fault. Like, this was the kind of shit she was getting thrown at her, I can imagine now, because I definitely was throwing it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But she kept coming back with love and kindness and empathy and being a good mom and a new way of being. She came back with a new way of being after, she was in her late 40s at that time. She kept coming back with a new way of being. And to me, that was one of the greatest gifts I ever got, because that became my whole life. Is about transformation, my own several times, transforming, becoming the butterfly, and helping other people to move past their blocks and their chains. And something I did have to realize, because that's part of my story, that I saw transformation. And after having worked with a lot of people, not everyone in this lifetime is going to transform. And I wonder, maybe that's why they say, hey, so you get to live, Buddhists, you live like 5,000 lives, because this guy ain't transforming today, I'll tell you that. This guy ain't transforming in this one. It definitely must be other lives for him to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe there is. So, but the point is that some people don't really make that massive transformation. Some people, like, I used to expect that everybody would be on that track, and that's just not true. And not everyone's going to choose to listen to us and be transforming now. And that's the idea of what we're doing here is perhaps we're helping you unlock doors within yourself right now. Just these thoughts. Sometimes one word or sentence has changed my whole way of being for life. The whole way I operate just unlocks a door. Wow. Boom. It's that powerful sometimes. And maybe right now something's happening like that for somebody. But anyway, my mom gave me that gift of transformation. And being able to become new. Was she perfect? No. But she really went through her past in the form of living human beings coming at her all the time with her past. And she kept rewriting the story. And I think that's so great, because for a lot of us, we just have our own past that we deal with every day. These stories coming at us, but you're this guy. You're the guy who didn't finish this. You're the guy who never made it. You're the guy who always gets to the end and loses. You're the guy who's that, whatever the story is. You're the guy who girls break up with. You're the guy who can't get the girl. You're the guy who, whatever the negative story is, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we can create a new identity, a new way of being, but like, you do have to do the work. You do have to go through that process one way or the other. And there's different ways to do that. My mom did it in a certain way. We all have our own ways of therapy, healing, transforming, ascending. We all have ways to do that and can learn new ways, and we should challenge ourselves, no matter who we are or what level we are in our ascension, that we should challenge ourselves to find new ways and to give our new things. And this experience we all went through challenged us all to to force new ways. And one of my new ways, like we talked about my ability to flow, I usually do get into the flow every day by going and connecting with people in some way, and that helps me. That was taken away, mandatory, taken away. And I had to find other ways to get into the flow. And it was a bit of a challenge because it became my practice, my ease. But then it was creating new momentum, creating new ways of being to find flow. And that is something for anybody who wants to create a social practice, like I'll often help people do. How do you just create this social practice? How do you do that? For a lot of people, they don't have that pathway. They don't have it yet. But over and over, I tell people it becomes natural to them as it is to me, you know? And just like a guitar teacher teaching someone the guitar, they can go on to greatness with it, you know? So, but they can just learn to play, you know, where they couldn't play before. So you have to go through the work and know that there is work, and have a belief that on the other side there is transformation, that there is another way of being. And we always have these stories. Hey, I came from this, my dad was this. And some of the stories really, you know, like I'm saying, like anger came easily to me. It was imprinted in my emotions, the way that I respond to things. Like, hey, you want to fuck with me? Let's fight. You know, I mean, I wasn't getting like fight every day, but it was like that. They're sort of like, that's how we roll in Philly, where I'm from. You know, that's it. And it's like seeing, hey, that doesn't serve me anymore as an adult. That doesn't serve me in any of my relationships, friendships, with romantic relationships. It doesn't serve me in business relationships. It doesn't serve me, and every single time it hurts me. Every single time. So over the years, I've gotten a hell of a lot better at that. But it still was so imprinted that it's still an easy thing for me to grab to, you know. And it's really looking for what, you know, who's the guy I see myself as? Who's the guy I want to be? And that's where I really do say, hey, you know what? I choose connection over being right. I choose stillness and serenity over being tough guy, over being right. I choose being magnanimous over being small. And this is where you start to evaluate, and that helps me in those tense moments. Like, wait, what would the magnanimous guy do? What would the guy who values stillness over showing how tough he is or showing you don't fuck with me do? Mm-hmm. What would the guy who values having friends and lovers do over being right, being sitting alone in a room, being right? It sounds like that's happened now, but this was by accident. So, you know what I mean? But that is a real thing. What would you do over being right? You know? So yeah, that's the kind of, and that's where we get into the identity of like, hey, you know, or it's more than just identity. It's like a calling. Like I'm being called to connection. I'm being called to connect with others, and everybody is, because we are this social animal. Whether you tend to give yourself this story that I'm an introvert, the story. And obviously for some of us, it's easier to go out and do that and just flow with it. But all of us need to be connected in different ways, sure. But we all need to connect it to other people in real life, not just online, not just through Tinder or swiping or even Zoom. We need to touch, we need to feel, we need to pick up the vibes, we need to be there. Mm-hmm. So all of us need that. And even me, who teaches people that, I need hours a day alone. I like it. I like to regroup, to rejuvenate. But I get so much value out of connecting, little connections, bigger connections, deeper connections. So the point is, transformation comes from going and letting go of the stories. Even in the face of that story coming back and yelling at you and screaming at you and saying, you are this, and you transcending. And I think that's a beautiful story I just told. And I never told that story before. Nice. So, and that's something to think about, you know. Yeah.
But how does it make you feel to share that story?
It makes me feel like a pretty smart guy, to be honest.
Pretty cool guy.
Yeah, unless he's goddamn cool. Because, no, it makes me see that it actually just made me have another realization. You know, that's my favorite kind of moment. Back to all the years I spent acting is the best acting is when the actor is surprised by what just occurred. It's the same in real life when two people are like, I was surprised by, I was having the epiphany as I was telling that story. You know, I've talked about stories before. I've talked about that. And we flew, that was flow that brought us to that. It was not, we don't have a document saying now it's time to talk about flow or transformation or the story of John's, the gifts that John, that was one of many gifts my mom gave me, by the way. But and she has passed on now. So, but we didn't say, let's talk about John's mom's gift story or, you know, it just, the flow took us there. And during that, just like really, what just really grabbed me by surprise is, wow. Besides like, wow, my mom did great. And that's like, I should really focus on like that for myself more. That not should, I could. And I will focus on that more. And, but what really got me is that idea that the story gets in your face. Like imagine a screaming, angry kid getting in your face and saying, you are this, you owe me that, you know? And then choosing to make a different response, choosing to come at you, go at those stories that come at us, really just in the form of stories, literally. They're usually not even people other than the IRS, you know, and an ex-girlfriend, or two or three, right? So, or four or five. Yes, I understand. That's bad. They usually just our own stories keeping us back. Like, I'm not this, I don't do that, this doesn't work out for me. And they're just coming at you just like those screaming kids. And maybe if you can personify them like that, it'll help you make a different response at them. Like talk to them with love and ease and kindness and make a new choice.
Well, that's kind of, that's the work of, excuse me, that's the work of transformation, right? That's the work of really healing the shadow and becoming more whole.
Right.
So I think another way to look at that too is that, you know, we all have our backstories and we all have our conditioning and things that have happened to us, and different people have different versions of that. But yet again, it's about who can you become. And there is it's a metaphor, but you can imagine that, you know, when you tune into what your potential is, when you tune into your, you know, your creative spirit, the higher self, the potential, the part of you that is really generating something from nothing into the future, then you have a different point of leverage. You have a point of leverage where you can start to actually change the way that you're operating. And the difficulty is learning to have faith in that process, learning to give power to that process, learning to train yourself to give that process enough momentum for it to really start to show you evidence that it's real and it can actually do that. And I think it does take will and some skill. And when I say skill, it just means like you've got to start creating some time and some space for yourself and dedicating action to change. And that could be journaling and reflecting and then writing about desires and dreams and goals or you know, spending time with yourself, thinking about how you would love to kind of give love and compassion and healing to parts of you in the past that have had wounds attached to them, or maybe even other people in the past. And it comes back to that very high level idea that I was talking about before, which I hope somebody takes something away from it, which is that like the one of the basic foundations of life is that everything is coming from this actual neutral place, really. And if everything's basically neutral, then you can tap into that neutrality, and then you can use that neutrality as a different position to look back at your story and then make change, to see things from a different place. And the reason that I think that's very powerful is because then you can look at your life, whether your experiences were good or bad, and you can start to see them from a more, let's say, healthy and depersonalized position. Because one of the fundamental things, and this is something that the Buddha really taught people, was that, you know, if we're attached to something or we're really afraid of something, then we're caught in the game of suffering. We're caught in the game of push and pull. And that's not to say that we need to give up everything and just become a vegetable that sits on the sideline of life, but it's important to recognize that it's about our relationship to grabbing onto things or pushing things away. So if I'm not addicted if I'm not addicted to grabbing things and holding onto them, or if I'm not addicted to pushing things away, then I have a freedom in that sense. Now, it's very hard to get to a level where you're completely free from grabbing and pushing everything away. I mean, that's enlightenment at a very high level. But to be able to bring that into specific small areas of your life is a start. So to look at in terms of like, I don't have to be attached to the pain of something anymore around my childhood. I can let that go. Because I had the same thing. I remember I used to be very resentful to my mother for various reasons. And then I spent some time. And one of the big changing factors for me was I spent some time really imagining if I was her and I had to make her decisions and I had to deal with her life and I had to be responsible for her position. And I started to have a lot more empathy and compassion. And at some point, my brain changed because the version of my mother that I was having conflict with inside my head became a more whole picture. It became a more complete version. And I could see the humanity and the difficulty and the frustration and the things that were hard for her. And when that happened, all of a sudden, all the tension and frustration and all the kind of, fuck you, and I've got to like, show you how upset I am, started to disappear. And then there was more of like, you're a person like me, you have struggles like me, and we're all actually in this together. And maybe I can help you, maybe I can support you, maybe I can share the journey with you, as opposed to being a kind of someone that was feeling offended or hurt by that kind of process. And that's not always easy, depending on what the context is you're coming from, but it's possible and it takes practice. And I think we can build up this kind of momentum that can start to have a very positive effect. And we talked about this too. We maybe shift into like a little bit of a different focus of sort of wrapping things up a bit, but thinking about like, when we want to build momentum in this process, right? So as we're starting to move out of stagnation, one of the things that I think is really, really useful, and I've been in and out of phases of difficulty and overwhelm and stuff for different reasons, I try to come back to what's the simplest basic first thing that I can do? And sometimes it's like, I can clean my room. That's something that I can do that's going to make me feel better. I can put on some good music and I can do a workout for 20 minutes. That's going to change my vibe. I can do some breathing exercises and I can get my energy going. I could do, because I trained in some of these things, but it's not that hard to learn. I could do some kind of NLP anchoring where I can spend some time meditating and thinking about what some good times I've had in my life and get myself pumped up on that and really feed that into my neurology. Like, this is good. I had a good time. Life can be good. I've had all these experiences. And sometimes that's all it takes is a kind of a switch, and then a completely different neurology kicks in and the dopamine and the serotonin starts coming back. I start seeing solutions. I start having more energy. I start feeling hope for the future. I start looking for possibilities. And what starts to happen, which is really powerful, is I move from a physiology of stagnation where my body feels heavy or I feel tired or I feel difficulty in some level. And when you're in stagnation, you tend to create subtle meanings out of that place. The world is this, I'm that, people are this, and we start to create these stories yet again. And we collect those stories on top of themselves. So not only does it suck that the world's in lockdown right now, I remember I was depressed before this and I had this other thing. And this reminds me of 5 years ago when that happened. And I know that this has happened for 10 years. And when I really think about it, my whole life's fucked and it's always been fucked, which is not really true. It's just like this accumulation of evidence that you've been playing on yourself. And when I change my physiology, then all of a sudden I go the opposite direction. It's like, it's a beautiful day. There's cool people around. Something nice is happening. Like I can feel energy. I can spend some time by myself. I can study something I'm wanting to learn for a long time, or I could do a project, or I can go for a walk, or I can do all kinds of things to start to build positive momentum. And then I start to become, a driver that's moving towards a positive outcome. I start to become a driver that's moving into the next evolution, the next possibility. And something to really consider, which is it's a bit of an interesting thought to think about, is like when you're trapped in the thoughts and the feelings and the physiologies of the past, of difficulty, there is no future. You don't have a future when you're coming from that place, because you're literally like putting like a mirror bubble on top of your head where you can only see the reflection of the same neurosis going over and over and over and over again. And the danger is if we let that happen for extended periods of time, we can stay in that shit for months or years or decades. I mean, I know people that have been completely lost in that. And there is a point of no return. If you do that long enough, you will have suicide by neurosis. You will kill yourself through your own feedback loops of inadequacy.
What I like, one of the things that you said, though, just so we don't lose it, which is that gentle self-talk of what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
I like that as an exercise. I can do. You know what I can do? You like say, oh, okay, like you got a good little friend there. It's so sweet. You know what I can do? I can go take a walk. And for me, I'll do that. Like right away, I'll be like, if I start getting stagnation, I know one thing I love to do. I love to walk, and I always feel good when I walk. And I just get up and I start walking. But it's movement. Or here now, I'll wash the dishes. You know, something I would have never have done in my other pre poo-poo world. Now, you know what I mean? I'll wash the dishes. I'll clean up. Every time I clean up, every time I organize my stuff, I do feel great. I do feel better. And the next thing I know, I'm on to something else. I'll walk. I can do that. That I can do. I can clean up. I can organize. I can do that. And it doesn't even have to be 20 minutes. You know what I can do? I can do one stretch right now in that one spot where it's tight. I'm just going to stretch it. I can do one thing. You know, I can do that. You know what I can do? I can wave at one person today. Yeah, even now, I can do that. I can wave at someone and say hello. Hello. I can do that. You know, I can do that. I like that as an exercise that people should learn, especially learn how to transcend the dictator. Bye-bye, guy. Here's what you should have done. Here's what you should do. You should have an 8-pack. Gary Vee says you should be feeling, you know, writing on all your social media posts exactly what I tell you. I mean, that way, I already didn't like him, but that really pushed me, you know? Don't fucking tell me how to fucking feel. Fuck you, you virtue signaling sociopath. You know, that's how I felt about that. You know? Yeah. I know he saw one of my videos once because I put another that video out about him and it got knocked around. So that's another story. So, but I will tell you this: I should is a negative word. I can is very powerful and usable and simple, and it's an easy way to just gently go and go back to that prime thing that we've been talking about, is feeling good about you, feeling great about being here, feel good about being a person who loves transformation and inspiration and being better, to finding your way. Feeling good. I can listen to this podcast. I can press play and listen to this. I can do this. That's great.
Yeah, it gets you moving.
Yeah, I can do it. The smallest thing. Yeah.
Yep. And another one, which I think is a nice one, this is probably a good one to start to finish up, is to just capture stuff. Like, for example, part of what I was talking about is it's very natural and normal for us as human beings to actually have a form of expression. Like, for hundreds of thousands of years, what would happen is, you know, I'd go out for a walk and I'd go and see what I would see. And in a traditional context, I'd come back and I'd tell my stories. I'd go, I found some tracks and I seen this thing and I got this great fruit and there's these other dudes over here doing something. And I'd come back and I'd share that. And there would usually be some interest in that because that's like the social media of the time. So our brains actually fed on it. That's why we're partly so addicted to social media, I think, is because we want to know what's going on. We want to know what other people are thinking. We want to know what the updates are. So the part of our human nature is to share and express and have ideas. But because there is a really ugly epidemic that's happening in the world, and it's an epidemic of disconnection. It's an epidemic of feeling isolated. And in this time that we've just been through, I think a lot of people are going to be feeling hyper isolation because you've just spent basically 2 months in a very small bubble. I mean, everyone's living inside their house, looking at screens, doing stuff. So coming out of that is going to take a little bit of momentum. And maybe if you're like a lot of people, myself included, you've got to get a handle on stuff. And one of the ways you can get a handle on stuff is you can just start writing lists. And even if it's messy, it doesn't matter. Start writing lists of like, this is all the shit that's on my mind. You know, good, bad, ugly, things to do, blah, blah, blah. And you'll find that even just getting it out there.
A brain dump, you're saying.
That's right. Getting out of your head.
Dump it out. Get your thoughts outside. Yeah.
Get your thoughts outside. And because if you've got no one else to share your stories with and to make sense of reality, which is what you're trying to do it on a piece of paper and do it with yourself. Use the paper as a mirror. And then look at it and have a bit of a think about, well, where am I going from here? What do I really want? What do I want to do? What do I need to do? What do I want to create? What can I create? And then start to get a handle on that. And also don't have high level expectations that, you know, that just sitting down for 10 minutes and doing a little bit of writing is going to change everything. But you might find that you sit down and write something down, get some stuff on paper, And then a few hours later, you start thinking a bit differently. You start feeling a bit differently. You start having ideas pop up and solutions, and your resources start kicking in, because yet again, our brains are designed to have targets. Our brains are designed to have like things that they want to try to find out. That's how we've learned and evolved our whole lives, is asking questions, having focuses, trying to work things out, trying to problem solve. So give yourself some good stuff to problem solve. And we could go on. I don't want to even enter into it really, but like you can see there's this proliferation of madness that's happened because of this period of time. Like people are just going into like conspiracy overdrive. And it's a generative part of their brain. What they're trying to do is get a handle on life. They're trying to be like, this is what makes sense. This is how it could make sense. But the problem with that is they're using their very powerful psychic potential, their focus, their mental energy, their power, their energy, to just feed into either some very negative fantasy that at best is just not true. It's just a fantasy. Or at worst, it's going to get them to go out and trash something or burn something or hurt somebody or do something stupid that's going to not really benefit anybody. It's actually going to cause suffering inside the world. So be strategic about what are you going to do? How are you going to create your future? What's important to bring life and power to? And, what I think you can very quickly start to do is come back to some fundamental basics. I know for myself, what's good for me is when I do things like I be aware of my sleep and I try to get enough sleep. I be aware of my food and I try to eat some basically good food. And I try to eliminate shit like, too much sugar, too much caffeine, too many things that are making me sick. I try to eliminate stuff like smoking or drinking or jacking off too much. And I try to introduce
news or Twitter or whatever negative algorithms coming into your brain, right?
Right, and use that to the opposite degree too. What's good for me is like I know that watching some inspirational media, that listening to somebody talking about how to grow my mind, how to focus my mind, listening to a spiritual teacher or a leader or a creator or watching a great actor or a star or somebody that has inspirational energy to inspire me is a good thing. And doing breathing and doing movement, going for a walk, doing some push-ups, doing something, anything that's moving towards that. So then what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to tune my reality to say, my preference is not that. My preference is this. And I need to consistently start to choose this, not that. And this is good when I do this because I like how I feel when I do this and I don't want to do that. Because if you just let your preferences go and you just let your preferences be set by artificial intelligence algorithms and smart interest groups that are trying to hijack you so that they can get money out of you or to get you to do something that they want you to do, you're just a pawn in the game. You're a battery in the matrix. So don't be that. Be the Neo. Be the guy who's waking up and saying, all right, I am the one. I'm the creator. I'm the one who's at the center of my reality. And I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to write my story. I'm going to create my story. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to learn from my story. And I'm going to learn from the positive stories of those around me. And my hope is, and this is a big hope, that there's a more positive trend of people that are going to return back to being the connectors, to being the hunter-gatherer connectors, to be the ones that once upon a time, that's what we were. We're just simple, really good people. And we valued simple, good things. And yet lions and tigers and fucking, starvation and shit's still going on. That's part of reality. But just deal with it and have as best of a time as you possibly can anyway.
Love it. I mean, that I think that is a nice way for us to bring it home, which is, during this time, we lost like those simple little things for me, and I look at, first of all, you said some great things, just to recap that, is whatever you bring in your body's coming out the other side. So you're bringing in high fructose corn syrup, it's coming out in your angst levels, your depression levels, and your belly and all that. You're bringing in negative news via any media that it comes through, that's coming out your mouth, it's coming out, you're going processing, you digest it, you process it. You're listening to all the conspiracy theories, which this situation is ripe for them, because the reality is we've been in the dark the whole time. And so it's going to naturally go there because there's no clear, nobody has a clear answer what actually just occurred or what's going on. And it changes every single day, like the stories, like one day no mask, next day mask, one day don't touch anything, wash your hands after you touch everything, the next After 3 months of that, they say, actually, it's not really come through touching. And then the next day they say, well, actually it does a little bit, you know, and I'll just to clear that up, you know, and then the next day it's like, whatever. Okay. So it's like, of course it leads to conspiracies, or it could just be that, you know, maybe for me, what it led to is, wow, nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're talking about. And it comes back to, I got to tune into my truth, my instinct, my impulses, and I have to honor them and follow them higher than anything else. We gave our power away, and they took it. People who made profit off of it, they took it, and it always goes in a bad place when they take your power. And your power is where you choose to focus every single fucking moment of your day. Every single moment of your life, you have this one choice over and over and over. Where am I going to focus my energy? How am I going to respond to what's happening? Where am I going to put my energy? Where am I going to put my attention? And so let's make that choice. Let's really focus in on, like me, I'm going to pay attention to feeling good about being me. I'm going to pay attention to feeling good about this day. I'm going to pay attention to being magnanimous, and I'm going to pay attention to being still and being optimistic, and of course being in a state of appreciation and gratitude. And like we were just one little thing when you were saying, like, being simple people. For me, there was things that I missed that were so simple I didn't even think about, and I realized how powerful they are to me, which is a simple thing like going and getting a good jasmine tea in the morning and having a back and forth with the person that sees me every day behind that counter, and having that moment, you know, that little micro moment, having a little flirt for a second perhaps, or just a small connection. Just that's that little thing, that human connection, that little micro connection. Having a chit chat with someone sitting next to me for a minute. I value and appreciate that so much. I'm excited here in Miami. Things are opening up. I can have those moments again with a mask on, but I can have those moments again. And I appreciate that so much. And when it's happening, I'm going to appreciate it even more than I ever did. So really look for those little things to appreciate and pay attention, and make that choice to appreciate instead of saying, here's what I don't have. What do I have? Where am I right now? That's great.
Well, we've said a lot. We've covered a lot of territory. It's beautiful talking to you, man. I hope the listeners got something valuable out of that and interesting. And hopefully we'll have some more of these podcasts and start to explore some other ideas, because there's lots of cool shit I'm sure we can talk about.
Yeah, 20 hours we could go. But this was great. Thanks for having me on. Man. John Keegan here, by the way, if you didn't know. John Keegan, The Awakened Lifestyle, at John Keegan Lifestyle, Instagram, YouTube, same idea, John Keegan. Not the war historian, but the dating life guy. Yeah.
Nice. We'll put a little bit of a bio in the description so people can kind of catch who you are as well. And like and subscribe if this has been useful to you. And let's keep the ball rolling. Keep on flowing.
Peace. Great to see you, Shae. Great to talk with you. Great to connect with you. Later.
Nice.